I thought my dying stepmother was asleep when I heard my father whisper, "Once she's gone, we sell the house." Then my mother laughed and asked about the lake house. His wife was breathing upstairs. I stood in the dark and pressed record. That was the moment everything inside me changed. Until then, I had been trying to survive the last weeks of Evelyn's life with as much grace as I could. The house was quiet in a way that made every ordinary sound feel too sharp. Evelyn had chosen to spend her final days at home. She said hospitals made her feel like a file number. She wanted her own bed, her own windows, and the garden she had spent years bringing back to life. She wanted sunlight in the morning and her favorite blanket over her knees. She wanted dignity. So I moved back in. There was no grand announcement or dramatic family meeting. Evelyn had been there for me when I was younger, when every adult around me seemed too busy with their own damage to notice I was drowning. Now she needed someone steady beside her, and I wanted to be that person. My father, Graham, told everyone he was devastated. In front of visitors, he held Evelyn's hand and spoke softly. He answered the door with tired eyes. He accepted sympathy like a man barely holding himself together. But when the visitors left, his grief changed shape. He complained about being trapped in the house. He sighed when Evelyn needed help. He disappeared into the garage for long phone calls, and whenever I walked past the window, his voice dropped. At first, I blamed stress. Grief does strange things to people, and I repeated that to myself because I needed it to be true. Then my mother, Denise, started coming around. My parents had been divorced for years, but they had never truly separated. They fought, blamed each other, rescued each other, and called it history. My mother had always treated my father like a bank she hated, but still needed. My father acted like he resented her, but he always answered. When I found her sunglasses on the entry table one afternoon, my stomach tightened. I asked my father why she had been there. He looked at me like I was the one being cruel. "Your mother is helping me get through this," he said. "Don't make this uglier than it already is." There was nothing helpful about Denise. She did not bring food. She did not ask if Evelyn needed anything. She came when Evelyn was asleep, sat in the living room, and looked around like she was already choosing what furniture she wanted. Before Evelyn, I thought every family treated money like a weapon. My parents divorced when I was young enough to believe adults knew what they were doing. After the divorce, they acted like they had escaped each other, but they stayed tangled in ways that made no sense to me. My mother always had a crisis. Rent was late. A car needed repairs. A job had ended unfairly. Someone had betrayed her. Something had gone wrong, and somehow my father was always expected to fix it. He complained every time. Then he paid. Sometimes he handed her cash in parking lots. Sometimes he covered a bill and reminded her of it for months. Sometimes he told me, in that tired voice he used when he wanted sympathy, that my mother was the reason he could never build a better life. But he never stopped answering her calls. As a child, I thought that meant love. Later, I realized it was control wearing the mask of obligation. He liked feeling needed. She liked being rescued. Neither of them cared that I was standing between them, learning that money always came with strings. I became careful. I stopped asking for school trips. I stopped mentioning things I needed. I stopped telling either of them when I was scared because fear always became a bargaining chip. Then Evelyn entered our lives. At first, I did not understand why she chose my father. Evelyn was calm in a way that made chaos look embarrassing. She did not raise her voice. She did not chase people. She did not explain herself twice when once was enough. She had built her own life before my father ever entered it, and she protected that life with quiet certainty. My mother hated her immediately. "She thinks she's better than everyone," my mother told me once. "Just because she has a house and some money." I remember looking around my mother's messy apartment and feeling something I was too young to say out loud. Evelyn was not cruel because she had stability. My mother was angry because Evelyn could not be manipulated the same way my father could. Evelyn never tried to replace my mother. She did not force affection or demand loyalty. She simply noticed things. She noticed when I got quiet at dinner. She noticed when I pretended not to be hungry because I did not want anyone arguing over grocery money. She noticed when I hesitated before asking for help. One night, while my father was out, she found me at the kitchen table surrounded by forms I did not understand. I expected her to walk past. Instead, she made tea, sat across from me, and said, "Show me what feels impossible." We worked for hours. Not because she had to. Not because anyone asked her. She just did it. That became Evelyn's way. She taught me how to make a budget, how to read documents before signing them, how to keep records, and how to stay calm when someone tried to rush me. She once told me, people who benefit from your confusion will always tell you that questions are disrespectful. I carried that sentence into adulthood. My father did not like how much I trusted her. He would make little comments, half joking and half resentful. Careful, he said once. She'll turn you into a little accountant. Evelyn just smiled and answered, good. Then nobody will be able to cheat her. Before she married my father, she made sure the house and certain assets stayed separate. My father acted like he respected that. My mother called it insulting. I did not understand all the legal details back then, but I understood one thing. Evelyn knew how to protect what she had built. What she did not know was how low my parents could sink when they thought nobody was listening. Evelyn's illness did not arrive like a storm. It arrived like a shadow. She got tired first. Then she lost weight. Then food started making her sick. She blamed stress, then a lingering stomach issue, then age. By the time the doctors found the real reason, the room had already changed before anyone said the word cancer. My father cried in the doctor's office. Evelyn did not. She sat very still, listening carefully and asking direct questions. What were the options? What would treatment realistically do? What would comfort look like if treatment stopped helping? Even then, she was thinking clearly. When she later chose hospice at home, my father told people she was brave. He said it with trembling emotion whenever friends called. He sounded like a devoted husband trying to honor his wife's wishes. For a while, I believed him. The first weeks were exhausting but tender. Evelyn had good days when she could sit in the sunroom and talk for half an hour. She would ask me small things, like whether the roses needed trimming or if I had eaten lunch. Even near the end, she worried about other people before herself. Then her bad days became more frequent. The hospice nurse, Nora, started visiting more often. She was gentle and practical, which I appreciated. She explained things without making them sound worse than they were. She could tell when Evelyn was tired before Evelyn admitted it. I handled most of the overnight care. I did not resent it. Evelyn had given me a kind of safety I had never known before, and caring for her felt like the only repayment that mattered. My father helped when people were watching. When Evelyn's friend Marcy came by, he sat near the bed and touched Evelyn's shoulder like he could not bear to be away from her. When Nora was present, he asked worried questions. When relatives called, he spoke like a man crushed by love. But alone, he became impatient. He complained that the house felt like a tomb. He said the medication schedule was too much. He accused me of treating him like a villain whenever I asked where he had been. Then Denise appeared more often. The first time I found her in the kitchen, she smiled like she belonged there. I just came to check on your father, she said. I looked at the mug in her hand. It was Evelyn's favorite one. She's sleeping, my mother added, as if that explained why she was inside the home of a woman who never would have invited her. I told my father it was inappropriate. He snapped. I am losing my wife, he said. I'm allowed to need support. That sentence shut me up for the moment because there was just enough truth in it to make arguing feel cruel. Maybe he did need support. Maybe grief had pushed him back toward the one person who knew the ugliest parts of his history. But Denise was not there to comfort him. She was watching. She studied the furniture. She asked careless questions about the garden. She wandered near Evelyn's office and pretended she had lost the bathroom. Once, I found her standing in the hallway, looking at framed photos of Evelyn from before she ever met my father. She had a nice life, Denise said. The way she said had made my skin crawl. Still, I stayed focused. Evelyn needed peace. The last thing she needed was a fight between me and my parents under her own roof. That was the mistake I kept making. I thought silence was protection. But silence does not stop people like my father and mother. It gives them room to move. The night I recorded them, I had not planned anything. Evelyn had been in pain for most of the evening. Nora had come by earlier, adjusted the care instructions, and reminded me to call if anything changed. By midnight, Evelyn was finally asleep in the upstairs guest room, her breathing slow but steady. I went to bed fully dressed because that had become a habit. I never knew when she might need me. Around 1 a.m, I woke up thirsty. I walked downstairs quietly, avoiding the places where the floor creaked. The house was dark except for a thin line of light under the dining room door. Then I heard my father say, "We need to know what we're dealing with." I stopped. My mother answered, "You mean what you're getting?" I moved closer without thinking. The door was not fully closed. Through the gap, I saw papers on the table. My father had Evelyn's folder open, the one she kept in her desk. He was flipping through documents while my mother leaned beside him, too comfortable in a room that was not hers. She kept saying everything was separate, he muttered. She said a lot of things, Denise replied. That doesn't mean you walk away with nothing. You're her husband. My father rubbed his face. The house is the big one. If I can get control of that, we can clear your cards and still have enough for a down payment. My mother's voice lowered. Don't sell too fast. Houses like this go high if people feel emotional about the garden and all that charm. I felt sick. They were not speaking like grieving people. They were speaking like buyers at an auction. My father said, once she's gone, I'll call someone. We'll get the estate paperwork moving. I just need it clean. And the lake house? My mother asked. He gave a small laugh. If this works out, maybe we finally do it. That was when I pressed record. My fingers were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I held it near the crack of the door and forced myself to stay still. They kept talking. My mother asked about accounts. My father complained that Evelyn had never trusted him enough. My mother said Evelyn had made him feel small on purpose. My father said he had spent years playing the respectful husband and deserved something for it. Then my mother said she won't need any of it soon. I wanted to throw the door open. I wanted to make them look me in the eye and explain how they could sit beneath Evelyn's roof, drink from her glasses, and plan their future over her final days. But I stayed hidden. Not because I was calm. Because Evelyn had taught me that the worst people often reveal themselves when they think they are safe. After several minutes, my father closed the folder. My mother told him not to worry. She said grief made people easy to influence. She said everyone would assume he was entitled to whatever came next. I stopped the recording and went back upstairs with my water untouched. I did not sleep. I sat in the chair beside Evelyn's bed and listened to her breathe. Her face looked peaceful in the dim light. For a few hours, she did not know what had happened downstairs. She did not know that the man sleeping in the room down the hall had been measuring her life in property value. By morning, I still had no clean answer. Then my father came upstairs wearing the tired, grieving expression he used for other people. Your mother and I are going out for breakfast, he said. I need a break. I looked at him for a long moment. He had no idea I knew. When the front door closed behind them, the house seemed to exhale. I stood outside Evelyn's room with my phone in my hand and felt like there were two kinds of cruelty in front of me. I could tell her and break her heart. Or I could let her die inside a lie. When I entered her room, she was awake. Her eyes moved to my face, and even weak as she was, she knew immediately. What happened? She asked. I sat beside her and took her hand. I need to tell you something, I said. But only if you want the truth. She stared at me for a long time. Then she whispered, I have never been afraid of the truth. So I played the recording. I watched Evelyn listen to her husband discuss her house, her accounts, and the life he planned to build with his ex-wife after she passed. She did not cry during the recording. She did not interrupt. Her hand stayed inside mine, light and cold, but her grip changed as the minutes passed. It became firmer. When my mother laughed about the lake house, Evelyn closed her eyes. That was the only moment I thought she might break. When the recording ended, the room was so quiet I could hear a bird tapping at the gutter outside. I'm sorry, I said. Evelyn opened her eyes. Her face had changed. The softness was still there, but beneath it was the woman I remembered from years before. The woman who could read a document and find the hidden trap no one else saw. Call my brother, she said. I hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, she said. And tell him to bring a notary. Her brother Calvin was an attorney, and he did not ask many questions when I called. He heard my voice, asked if Evelyn was alert, and said he would come as soon as possible. Before he arrived, Nora came by for her scheduled visit. Evelyn asked her, very clearly, to note that she was awake, aware, and understood who was in the room. Nora did not get involved in family matters, but she confirmed Evelyn was lucid. Evelyn answered every question with steady focus. That mattered. Not because anyone was staging a dramatic courtroom moment. There was no grand plan. There was just a woman at the end of her life, making sure nobody could later pretend she did not understand what she wanted. When Calvin arrived, he looked at me only once before going into Evelyn's room. I waited in the hallway, close enough to hear low voices, but not enough to understand every word. They talked for a long time. Evelyn already had documents in place. Her house had been hers before the marriage. She and my father had kept certain assets separate. But she wanted everything tightened and clarified in a way that left no room for confusion. Calvin explained the options. Evelyn chose a trust. Not because I asked her to. I did not sit beside her and tell her to leave me anything. I did not suggest amounts. I did not ask for the house. I was too overwhelmed to think that far ahead. Evelyn made her own decisions. She transferred what she legally could into the trust and named me as the beneficiary. She left my father a specific amount of money, not enough to reward him, but enough to show she had considered him deliberately. Calvin explained later that this did not make a challenge impossible, but it made it much harder for my father to claim he had simply been forgotten. Evelyn also wrote a letter. I did not read it then. When the signing was done, Calvin stepped into the hallway and looked exhausted in a way I had never seen before. She knew exactly what she was doing, he said. I nodded, but I felt no relief. That night, Evelyn asked me to sit with her in the sunroom. I wrapped her blanket around her shoulders and helped her into the chair by the window. The garden was dim in the evening light. For a while, she said nothing. Then she looked at me and said, "You think you hurt me?" I could not answer. She continued, "You did. But not by telling me." My throat closed. She looked toward the garden. I would rather leave this world with my eyes open than hand my life's work to people who were waiting for me to disappear. That should have comforted me. In some ways, it did. But the human heart is not a courtroom. Truth can be right and still hurt beyond measure. Evelyn passed peacefully 3 weeks later. I was holding her hand when it happened. The room was quiet. The curtains were open. Morning light was on the floor, exactly how she liked it. My father cried loudly when he found out. I watched him from across the room and wondered which part of him was grieving, the wife he had lost, or the future he thought was coming. The meeting happened after the funeral, in Calvin's office. My father arrived in a dark suit, looking like a man prepared to receive sympathy. He moved slowly, spoke softly, and thanked Calvin for handling Evelyn's affairs with respect. My mother came too, but she stayed in the reception area because she had no legal reason to be in the room. She sat with a magazine she was not reading, one leg crossed over the other, watching the door like whatever happened inside belonged to her. I sat across from my father and kept my hands folded in my lap. Calvin did not perform grief. He was calm, direct, and careful with every word. He explained that Evelyn had updated her estate plan before she passed. He explained the trust. He explained that the house and the assets placed inside it would not pass to my father the way he had expected. Then he said I was the beneficiary. For a few seconds, my father did not move. His face emptied first. Then it hardened. "That's not possible," he said. Calvin remained calm. "It is. I'm her husband." "You were considered in the documents," Calvin said. "Evelyn made a specific provision for you." My father looked at the number, and his grief disappeared so quickly it was almost frightening. "This is insulting." "It was intentional," Calvin said. My father turned to me. At first, he looked confused, as if he needed me to explain why the world had stopped obeying him. Then realization began to spread across his face. "You did this," he said. I did not answer. His voice rose. "You got into her head when she was sick." Calvin cut in. "Be careful. She was medicated," my father snapped. "She wasn't thinking clearly." Calvin's expression did not change. Evelyn was confirmed lucid at the time she signed. "The documents are valid." My father stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. "You stole from me," he said to me. "After everything I did for you." That was when I finally spoke. "You were selling her house while she was still alive." The room went still. My father's mouth opened, but nothing came out. "She heard you," I said. "Both of you." In the dining room. His face changed again, and this time it was not grief or anger. It was fear mixed with humiliation. He knew exactly which night I meant. He left without another word. The shouting started later. My mother called first. I did not answer, so she left messages accusing me of turning against my own blood. She said Evelyn had poisoned me. She said I had chosen a dead woman's money over family. My father sent one message. He told me I was no daughter of his. I read it once, then blocked him. In the months after, their lives got smaller fast. My father had debts I had not known about. My mother had even more. Without Evelyn's money, without the house, without the future they had whispered about over her dining table, they ended up exactly where they had been trying so hard not to be, trapped together, angry, broke, and blaming everyone except themselves. People tell me that should feel satisfying. Sometimes it does. Then I walk into the sunroom and see Evelyn's empty chair. The house is mine now. Legally, completely mine. I water the roses. I keep the curtains open. I still use the budget notebook she gave me because it has her handwriting on the first page. But victory is a strange word for inheriting something through grief. A few days ago, my Aunt Lydia called. She is my father's sister, but she was never close to my mother. I expected anger. Instead, she sounded tired. What your father did was wrong, she said. I won't defend him. I waited. Then she said, but I keep thinking about Evelyn. She was already at the end. Did she need to know? Did she need to spend her last weeks carrying that? I closed my eyes. Lydia's voice softened. Maybe you gave her control. Or maybe you took away the last comfort she had. I don't know. That was the part that stayed with me. Because I do not know either. Evelyn told me she wanted the truth. She made her own choices. She protected what she built from people who had already started dividing it in whispers. But I am also the person who played that recording beside her bed. I am the person who watched her understand that her husband was waiting for her life to turn into money. Some nights, I tell myself I gave her dignity. Other nights, I wonder if I gave her pain and called it justice. So now I live in the house she loved, surrounded by everything she protected, still asking myself the question nobody in my family can answer without wanting something from me. Was I wrong for showing my dying stepmother what my father and mother were planning behind her back?